I believe that if you're going to continue working with insurance companies, you have to learn to be a boxer, and you have to get in the ring and be strong, get the right coach. And if you are a practice that is basically just doing what insurance companies is telling you to do and, following the same rules, then nothing is going to change.
Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your private medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe that everything you and I and everyone on the planet experience is the perfect outcome of our current system. And there's value in owning that outcome. It doesn't mean we have to like it. But if we know that it is the perfect outcome of our current system, then we can step back, tweak the system, and get something that we are looking for. And today, we have a special guest. Her name is Olga Khabinskay. She's the Director of Operations at WCH Service Bureau, a national healthcare practice management services company that provides coding, billing, and credentialing. She's also a board member of the Healthcare Business Management Association. Olga, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Zed. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I want everyone listening to kind of think of, they could have this great day. They show up to work, they're treating patients, patients are feeling better, the work they're doing is valued, the patients are leaving happy, the team feels like we are accomplishing all these things. And to keep that going, the practice must collect revenue. And many times, this part of the business is this scary, behind closed doors. They don't know what's going on, the dealing with insurance companies. And it sounds like you are passionate about protecting that revenue of those practices.
Yes, I think every single provider who is operating a private clinic contracts with insurance companies to provide services to patients, and they expect to get paid timely, correctly for the services they provide. Unfortunately, the tradition of common reimbursement is changing rapidly. We have started seeing the changes the last 10 years, how the claims are processing longer, insurance companies are delaying payments on claims, and a lot of denials are floating into the practice, regardless of the specialty. It could be a pediatric practice, it could be a radiology clinic, it could be a surgery center. Everyone have a common problem. The pain point is denials. And as a reimbursement specialist, as an auditor, we deal with a lot of requests. How can we boost our revenue? How can we avoid denials, sort of called clean claims? Do they even exist? And that's the major value of working with billing companies. And I guess making sure that at the end, all those commitments and responsibilities that insurance companies are promising in their contracts, in their webinars, in their, congressman speeches, that they are real and they really add value to the physician practice. We don't want physicians to be out of network. We don't want surprise bills. We want physicians to be treated equally and fairly. But insurance industry is changing from the HMOs to the PPOs. And of course, with the large insurance companies such as Aetna, United, and Cigna, the big players, and the Anthem of Blue Cross also, this is no longer the same world. It's very complex. Every May, new doctors graduate, excited to start my own business in medicine. And then they can't get credentialed, they can't get into the network because the panels are closed. There's so many different things and obstacles that take place, or they get in, but credentialing is 8 months versus 3 months. So it's very challenging. So my voice and the voice of many billing companies is to protect providers, to give them faster door to open, to get into the insurances, and to protect their revenue once they're contracted, to make sure that their insurance company is doing their job and diligence when it comes to processing claims.
Yeah, it is a very frustrating relationship that doesn't really exist in any other industry.
Mm-hmm.
You have, and for people who listen to this podcast, I talk about behavior a lot. Human behavior is relatively predictable, and bias and heuristics are known.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was my job to create a model where I could spend the least amount of money as an insurance company, it would be pretty easy to do. And they're doing those things. These companies are smart. They are traded on Wall Street. They are extraordinarily profitable, and they understand the games to play that keep them safe enough to continue playing them. And they understand the negative impact of those games and what the behavior will be from the practice. And
Yes.
to me, they're playing a bigger game. And there are practices out there who just assume that there's nothing they can do about it and that they're
Mm-hmm.
just a pawn on the chessboard. And what I'd want to call out to those practices is that's a similar feeling that patients have when they're dealing with something. Very commonly, patients think that they are supposed to live that way and they're in pain or they're sick or they're miserable. And it's this part of the brain that's telling them, look, this just is the way it is. You don't need to go to a doctor. You're getting older. You're getting this. You're getting that. It's just the way it is. And
Mm-hmm.
as a physician, when you hear that from a patient, that drives you nuts because you know you can help. Well, keep in mind, in this scenario, you are like that patient who is
Right.
saying, I guess this is just the way it is. And that doesn't have to be the case. Am I off base with any of that?
No, you're right on point. It doesn't need to be this way. There are so many processes in place what physicians can utilize. They might not be aware what's going on as far as Department of Finance. Each state, each level has an agency that oversees another agency. So there's means where you can go up to the ladder, to the executive medical team at the insurance company to set a complaint. There is measures where you can do locally on your state level to make sure that the insurance company is paying you on time. And if they're not, there's an interest involved in collecting additional revenue from the insurance company. So I think physicians are overwhelmed with patient care, right? They have a malpractice that they need to meet requirements, right? They're concerned about post-care. They're concerned about continuity of care, right? And there are also patients that are non-compliant. So they're dealing a lot. The administrative burden with working with insurance company creates another additional headache that they tend to not to want to think about. And they do give in and they accept delays in payments and they do accept lack of authorizations on services for patients that are in need, right? Instead of 24-hour authorization, we're now into 72, sometimes into 5 days to get authorization for a patient that is in pain and needs a procedure. So we all need to kind of sometimes come together, the billers, the legislature, the coders, the physicians. We have to combine the voice that could be loud enough that executives on the insurance level can understand that we are the physicians, the voice of physicians, providing care to treat your members, for which you charge an enormous premium. So what exactly are these patients getting? They have a high copay, high deductible, inability to get authorized for services, inability to go to urgent care when they need to. So there's so many pitfalls in this process that the system is broken, right? But at the same time, the CEOs are making lots of money, right? And that's the main goal for the insurance companies, to keep the leverage at the income of the insurance company versus the point of care level, which is pretty much at its worst right now, especially with Medicare Advantage plans that are coming up with their own rules and the government not able to tame and control the fee schedules, which is supposed to be publicly available. So that I, as an interventional radiologist in Texas, or I, as an interventional radiologist in Florida, billing Aetna, should be getting the same rate for the same procedure, but I'm not. And I can't check that. I can't verify it. So it's a conflict that insurance company are thriving from.
Yeah. What about the person, there's not going to be many people listening to this that disagree, but what about the person who feels like them doing anything is like trying to chlorinate the ocean with an eyedropper? That this is just too big of a task. What would you tell that person who feels almost defeated?
Well, if that person feels defeated, that means they had many bad experiences. They lost too many battles. They might have worked with the wrong company, that they've trusted their practice in billing, or maybe they had an internal billing or a manager just did not do much. And they need to always consult peer-to-peer, ask others, especially if you're not planning to retire and if you are building your practice, you're 10 years in, you have 30 years to go. I believe that if you're going to continue working with insurance companies, you have to learn to be a boxer and you have to get in the ring and be strong, get the right coach, and pull it through. And this is the only way. And if you are a practice that is basically just doing what insurance companies is telling you to do, and following the same rules, then nothing is going to change. They're going to eat out the fee schedule. They're going to continue struggling with everything they're going through now. And that insurance company most likely going to lose patients and members because they're going to transfer somewhere else. So eventually, at some point, there will be a shift that the insurance company will lose, or the provider will be the loser who will be forced to kind of obey these rules and not be able to succeed. So, look around, see what things that can change. It could be just internal issues that are escalated to the point where you're not getting paid for services, but it's the management or internal billing team that's not doing their job properly. Also, the EMRs, it could be the technology they're using that's outdated and they need to get, advanced technology. So it's a lot of analysis that compares you to your peers, that allows you to see what else can I do better.
If you had mentioned if they're working with a company that they currently trust, how does someone pick a company that they can trust with so many options out there and so many things, flying around with different, selling points and this, that, and the other? What does someone do?
I think the biggest advice that I can give, and I have witnesses for over 23 years already, that helps a lot to understand if you're with the right company: ability to speak, ability to have a conversation about denials. Like lately, for the last 10 years or so, technology has removed relationships between billers and doctors. We rely on looking and reading the denial versus speaking and discussing the issues of the denial that we can change together. So if any providers or doctors or practice administrators are not receiving or having a conversation regularly, meaning weekly, bi-weekly, right? But there is a communication with a real human being that's taking care of the practice, this practice will always have the same problems, and they'll never get out of them. Because sometimes issues with denials have to do because there is a missing component in the chart, and that particular code was never reported on billing. So it's a multitude of things that could be. Communication is very important with the billing team. Second, what I feel is important: education. Continuing monitoring of the changes on the insurance side, from the Medicare federal to the Medicaid state level, and figuring out what's changing in the insurance side. What is bundling? Why certain procedures are not paying out anymore? What has been replaced? So continuing education gives resource that increases the revenue and creates compliance for billing and the practice. So that is a requirement from billers. We are getting CEUs, right? We are responsible, right? We have no license, by the way, right? We don't have a license for our industry, right? And I don't know if that's ever going to change, but I feel like if billers had a license, we would be, treated with a higher level of integrity, and we will take more responsibility to making sure the claim is clean with the defined codes properly matching what was performed with the patient. So at least we don't have that in place now. Then the education. The doctors need to understand that the company they're working with is doing everything possible to make sure they're educating and training their staff with up-to-date requirements. So that would be the two things that I would definitely recommend.
So I have a question. It's probably going to be a pointless question because it can only be based on your anecdotal experience. But you bring up the idea of license. If I could wave a magic wand and you are required to have a license that had a high level of requirements, what % of the current billing companies out there in the world would still exist if I could just flip that switch in a moment?
I would say half.
Wow.
Immediately. Because there are billing companies that are popping up like mom and pop shops. I unfortunately consider these companies a risk because their niche might be one specialty that they know how to create claims because once before they were practice manager. So they're not tailored to provide the full RCM, the full revenue cycle management, right? That fancy term that we picked up 5 years ago and everybody's using it. But I understand that there's a whole cycle of things that happen that drives the revenue, right? From the office to the biller, from the insurance and back and forth, right? So we will have people that will not be committed. Because if you're getting a license, you're getting continuing education requirements, you will be audited, and you might not sustain that leverage of pressure because you are now a licensed professional, just like the physician. We're expecting certain things from you. Your behavior has to change. We need to ask the right questions. We need to do due diligence and verification if the patient was in the office or not, right? We're going to bring down the fraud because we're going to ask the right questions from our doctors. So I feel that no one would, because it's going to also create an additional cost for the infrastructure for the billers, right? So I feel that 50% will definitely drop. Don't forget that 50% includes offshore as well, because we have American-based companies that are outsourcing fully. They just have sales division that are communicating with providers here, but the routine work is done offshore, which is I'm fine with that. It's as well. But if you are a biller that is submitting claims to an insurance company, Medicare, Medicaid, you got to have a license. You have to have something on that claim form that tells me I am responsible for this document, for this claim.
Right. Fascinating. If, there's something that's being tossed around a lot, and it's just the simple mention of AI. There's companies developing new software tools that they believe are going to help practices with efficiency, but AI can also be used against you a bit. So what does the implementation of AI look like from the perspective of the insurance company, and how is that affecting medical practices?
Great question. If you would ask me this question a year ago, I would tell you that a year ago, we only saw simple processes being taken over by AI. For example, I would no longer be able to speak to a live representative about the claim status. Oh, well, now I can log in and look at the portal and get AI claim reveal. But lately, for the past half a year, great change with the use of AI by insurance, which creates an enormous interruption of payments for clinics throughout the United States. Thank God Medicare is not utilizing this. They actually have, a team of individuals processing denials and appeals. But certain insurance companies, including Aetna, including Cigna, United Healthcare, with United Healthcare specifically, there's a case now officially under investigation, checking into the how fast they deny the claims. So Cigna was denying thousands of claims in seconds because they put a certain algorithm for denying codes, and that algorithm just denied thousands of claims for specific specialty at one point, at once. So those denials with the use of AI create additional administrative work for billing companies, additional administrative work for the practice that not utilizing billing companies, doing everything on their own. They often forgive and forget also, right? I get a denial. Okay, I don't have time to process it. I'll get to it sometimes. Fine. That's why billing companies, they scrub every single claim. They're more concerned about the revenue of each claim. So we are filing more appeals than ever before for reconsideration to prove to them that they should be paying out this claim, referring to the policy of the insurance company. We're doing unnecessary work while the insurance company is enjoying this game because
but they're paying more money, right?
Yeah, they're holding out to the funds.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we know from just experience of speaking to other billing companies, to speaking to doctors who are not with us, some of them truly never get to reprocessing the claims. They don't have time and the manpower to do it. So it's a big problem. Then AI decided to step into down coding. So I'm submitting 99213, I get back 99212 payment. Now I have to now create my own AI tool in my program to flag unmatched payments. So we are playing a game, right? Whoever's the strongest will win. And it's a big issue. So I'm very happy to see that California, Texas and a couple more states have already enacted a rule where human intervention is needed for processing appeals. So let AI deny my claim at the claim level, but when I submit the appeal, I want Blue Cross to take that appeal and physically review by a human being that will give me an answer, not a system, not a machine learning device. So hopefully other states will see the impact. 30% in revenue increase was already noticeable by Blue Cross and United Healthcare in California provider claims when they enacted that rule. So
the providers saw a 30% increase in revenue
yes,
when they turned that on.
Yes.
And that makes sense because just think through the process. If the insurance company believes we can save by automatically denying using AI, knowing most people won't appeal, and if they appeal, who cares? We have AI do that too.
Yep.
When you switch to one of these states that if we're going to automatically deny everything and we're going to create more appeals for ourselves, and now that's taking a human, now that actually is hurting the insurance company. So then they're going to back off in regards to how those AI. So I just want to paint that picture for people to understand that everything is connected. There's no a single light switch, right? It's a mousetrap, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're following that pretty well. I also feel that insurance companies are sharing their results with one another. It's funny how one thing United Healthcare does, in a couple months, Cigna deploys the same plan. So they're learning from one another, right? So I guess that they adopt the same processes.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fascinating conversation, Olga. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing it with me and our audience. If someone, we might have floated up a question or two from somebody who's listening. Do you mind if they just reach out directly to you, like through LinkedIn or something?
LinkedIn will be the best. Just directly send a message to me. My LinkedIn also has my email. If somebody wants to set up a call, not a problem.
Okay. And we'll make sure to put that LinkedIn link in the show notes so that everyone has easy access. And thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity as well.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next time on the Physician Growth Accelerator.